Sea of Thieves announced the Monkey Island crossover, and while you may have watched the teaser, I'll bet you missed some things in the teaser that are actually way too cool to miss. Starting out, we see company logos flash, the crew that we follow throughout the video emerge from the shroud, and we get a far distance view of Melee Island. We can see a little bit of the clock tower and the governor's mansion, and then we see the title. But the next seconds are actually really cool. Walking into Scum Bar, we actually get an exact match of when Guybrush first walks into the bar in the 90s game. There's a person swinging on an anchor hanging from the ceiling, holding a green bottle, a guy sleeping on the leftmost side of the screen, a mysterious person on the rightmost side of the screen leaning on the wall drinking grog, 3 people sitting at the back also drinking grog, and 4 people sitting at the table closest to us, with our little crab friend that shows up in all the teasers, and all of them are wearing the same exact clothes as the clothes they were wearing in the 90s game. What have you guys been doing all this time? Rare even has it down to the 3 cannon holes on the farthest wall. The next shot, we see 3 pirate leaders of Melee Island. They are also wearing the same clothes as in the old game, and are even sitting in the same order as the one in the 90s game. Seriously guys, get up, go do something. After that, we see a shot of Stan's previously owned vessels. On the very right, we can see our own obsidian cannon, and next to Stan's shop, we can see a barrel labeled Grog, which is a more Sea of Thieves style grog vending machine that was seen next to Stan's shop in the 90s game. Then we cut to Stan showing the crew a sinking rowboat that has a sold as seen sign on it. This is a similar sign that you can see on one of Stan's sinking ships in the 90s game saying as is. But my favorite detail that people may not have seen is the jacket that Stan wears has a purple and blue checkered pattern. But that's not the cool part. If you look closely, the pattern does not move with the jacket, just like the pattern doesn't move in the 90s game. Seems to me that Rare is really trying to deliver here. Hats off, Rare. The next shot we get is in the town of Melee. The only detail that I noticed in this shot is the clock in the background is at 10 o'clock, the same time that shows on the clock in the 90s game. Next, we see our crew walking up to the governor's mansion and then barging into Guybrush's room while Guybrush is playing with dolls of what I can only assume is him and his wife, Elaine from the 90s game. More on that in a bit. While we get a look at Guybrush on the top of the frame, there's a picture that has a chicken pulley that we see later in the teaser, and the fabulous idol that Guybrush is thrown into the ocean with in the 90s game. We see Guybrush stand up, and on the right is a picture of LeChuck with a couple of knives stabbed into it. Guybrush then unsheathes the sword, and if you pause, you can see the details like engravings on the blade, the gold hilt, and the red ribbon tied to the hilt, which are the same details as on the cursed cutlass of Cthulhu that we see in the Tales of Monkey Island game. Guybrush also accidentally cuts his belt, holding up his pants while unsheathing, the same thing that he does with his dead ancestor's bone in the second game. Clothes are also the same. The next shot we see is the mouth of the monkey opening up to the lair of LeChuck, which my guess is right before we walk down and run into Elaine. Again, more on that later. We cut to a shot of one of the pirates, and in the background, we can see the gate that Guybrush had to walk through by feeding a monkey a banana in the 90s game. The next shot, we get a look at LeChuck in the Sea of Thieves universe, and he actually looks really cool. His skeleton has a green tint to it, and his eyes are glowing red. Next shot, we're in a circus tent owned by the Fettuccini brothers, who taught Guybrush the basics of cannon in the 90s game. One of our crewmates is shot out of the cannon, but misaligns his shot, smashing into a pole, which is the same thing that happens to Guybrush when he sends out of the cannon in the 90s game. One of the brothers puts a pot on one of the crewmates' heads, which is a reference to Guybrush's pot that he also puts on his own head when shooting out of the cannon. Next shot we get is in the International House of Mojo, run by the voodoo lady who helps Guybrush along all of his journeys. On the right of the shot, you can see the character Murray, who is a skeleton head in the game, jumping around in a crewmate's hand to get a good view of voodoo lady. Next we see LeChuck's ship being driven out of his lair. In the front of the ship, we see the classic harpoons, but also frontal cannons. Imagine what Reaper runners would think of that one. We then see Guybrush's wife Elaine is the one driving LeChuck's ship out of the lair, which makes me think that this story might be about Elaine being captured in LeChuck's lair and we have to help her escape, which might explain why Guybrush hasn't left his mansion and why he's playing with dolls. Why Guybrush isn't doing anything to help, I don't know, but hey, that's just a theory. A game theory! And lastly, we see our crew ziplining down with those same chicken pulleys to Stan's shop. These chicken pulleys are pulled straight out of the game when Guybrush goes to his crewmate Meat Hook's house for the first time. And also follow me on my Twitch where I might be streaming Sea of Thieves right now, and if you want to learn the 10 types of crews you encounter in every Hourglass fight, then click on this video right here and learn all about it.